So to be honest, something that I've been kind of neglecting to mention about the about the Boruto anime with its new arc is that it's really slow, right? It's kind of a slow burner at this point because it's setting up a lot of things that are going to eventually end up happening later on as the series continues. Obviously, with the current arc of what we're currently watching right now, with Code and him trying to get rid of his limiter so that he can eventually get revenge on, the Hokage and being Naruto and the Uchiha being Sasuke. And eventually, I think, end up. No, I actually know that's what it is. That's what they said he was going to do. Bring back the Ten Tails, create a chakra fruit, take all the chakra on the planet, and then just basically do the same thing all over again on different planets. Basically continuing the Otsutsuki's plan and of which they had been doing for who knows how long. And it's a slow burn, right? And this isn't normally a bad thing in shows, but it really just has to depend on whether or not what they're doing and what they're talking about and what the episode is trying to show and portray is interesting enough. And I think in some ways the episode and even previous episodes have kind of been able to accomplish that in some ways. Like, I really liked Kawaki in this episode because it continues on further developing his goals and what he's really trying to strive for. He continues to see himself more as an outcast and nothing more as just like some guy who's just in the village, within the Hidden Leaf village. He doesn't see himself as being a part of the village itself and being a part of the now family that he's a part of now. He now has a family that he's a part of that he desperately wants to protect. He wants to protect the village and he wants to protect the Hokage because that's who he respects the most now, because he's essentially the one who basically saved his life and helped him turn his whole life around and help him be a better person. But he still sees himself as an outcast, but he's still willing to potentially do whatever he needs to in order to accomplish what his true goal is, which is protect the Hokage and protect the village. And Amato even in the episode insinuates that they get him back his karma seal, because the way that he explains it in the episode was basically like Kawaki is a house and the karma seal was the doorway, and Ishiki was the owner of the house. Once the doorway was sealed off, Ishiki lost all of his power and his life force, and he disappeared. And the only thing that now currently remains, because Kawaki is still a vessel for Ishiki Otsutsuki, he's still technically Otsutsukified. That's what they literally describe it. I think that's really funny. He could still potentially end up using that power, which we know he's going to have to eventually end up getting back that ability or getting back a karma seal eventually later on as the series continues. But at the very end of the episode, he insinuates that he still has another means of gaining more power to protect what he really treasures the most. And we also see a little bit from Boruto as well. Not a whole lot, and I feel like they should have showed off a little bit more. Maybe cut some of what happens with Code, because we go back with Code and Ada very briefly. But I really liked how in the episode they showed off very briefly, like I said. It wasn't like a whole lot, it was basically just like one scene. Boruto is still continuously terrified and fearful that eventually he's going to end up losing control of his body, and he's not going to be able to return back to his normal self, and that Momoshiki is going to eventually end up taking full control, and Momoshiki in Boruto's body is going to do a lot of very terrible and evil things, and Boruto just simply can't do anything about it because he's just lost complete control, to the point where he's so fixated on trying to get rid of Code that they can put their focus back on doing that. And because his focus is on a whole bunch of other stuff, he doesn't even really want to help his sister, who's still trying to do her training at the ninja academy. And it freaks him out, and so he kind of he just goes off on his own and waits until Kawaki gets back so that they can have dinner. And then, like I said, we cut back pretty briefly, and it wasn't too long for the episode, with Code and Ada. And she essentially is like, yeah, there's one more like other cyborg that is like my royal knight, or that's what she calls Code. Like, yeah, I'm your eyes and ears, but then you're like my my knight or whatever the fuck. There's another one that she has, and the main thing about like her other like subject basically is like, not only is he her brother, like her actual little brother, but he's the only other person besides Boruto and Kawaki who can actually inflict any sort of wound, and who actually has, you know, the ability to be able to cause like fatal injury and harm to Ada, because Ada has like a special unique ability that only she has, that basically stops anyone from potentially doing that. And his name is Daemon, and I really like his ability because I feel like I've seen it somewhere else before, but like elsewhere in like a different show, and even then it's sort of still kind of like Sasuke's old Rinnegan ability, sort of, but in a different way, where basically his like unique special ability that we know of so far, because Ada basically is like, yeah, he has this one ability, and that's all we're going to tell you that he has for now. Where basically, if someone has like malicious intent and intent to cause bodily harm, potentially fatal or not, essentially what Daemon is capable of being able to do is he completely reflects that entirely and skips the end result to onto the person who's trying to attack him. Basically, he's completely untouchable, right? If you're trying to, you know, basically shoot a gun at him, the bullet wouldn't end up going towards him and, you know, penetrating his body. It would actually basically turn completely back around, and it would actually hurt you instead, even though you were pointing the gun away from yourself. I think it's a cool ability. Like I said, I feel like I've seen it from other characters from different shows, and even certain characters that have existed in the Naruto world, but to a lesser extent. That's kind of all I really have to say about the episode, though. Again, like more of a slow burner. Shikadai ends up showing up in the episode, and I really like how he's continually kind of being more like his dad. And Shikamaru was always like a fan favorite character because of just who he was and his morality and his ideals, and just being like the best bro character. And Shikadai kind of does more of the same thing, and he and the rest of the Ina Shikacho trio, so Chocho and Inogen, they try to further solidify that he does belong in the village now. They all accept him as a member of the village, but Kawaki still treats himself as like an outcast. We also get to see him like playing I think it's shogi with Shikamaru, which I thought was funny. Not really a whole lot much more to talk about, right? It's more of a slow burn episode, like what we've been having for the past couple of weeks. And I don't know, it's not bad, right? It's actually very intriguing. It's very interesting to watch, but I feel like also at the same time, not a whole lot is really happening. Obviously, a whole lot is happening because it's setting up for what's going to eventually end up happening later, like at later points of the arc and at later points of the show, but not a whole lot is happening in the moment. It's just setting up for something to eventually happen, and it kind of ends up leading towards the end result of the episode not really being that memorable and not that entertaining to watch. Besides, again, when Daemon eventually ends up showing up and during that part of the episode, because I think his ability was kind of neat. But other than that, I don't really have much else to say about the episode. It was fine, again, doesn't really feel like a whole lot happened. It's just setting up for future stuff to happen, stuff that we don't even really know what's going to happen yet. Well, I think this is adapting from the manga, so obviously if you read the manga and this happened in the manga, then you know what's going to happen eventually. You know what's going to happen to the characters later on. But because I don't read the Boruto manga, because I don't know anything about these characters, I'm waiting for something to actually end up happening. Anyways, that's besides the point. I don't really have much else to talk about with the episode. It was fine. It wasn't, bad, but it's not going to be like an episode I'm going to like remember, right? I'm going to remember like bits and pieces of it, because they were like genuinely important pieces there are genuine pieces that are worth remembering because they're going to come back later on, but it's not like it's not an episode overall I'm going to remember like too heavily about. I'm going to remember something else. That's besides the point. I'm kind of rambling on at this point. It wasn't bad. It was, intriguing, slow burn episode. Hopefully we'll pick up the pace in like next week. Hopefully. But yeah, that's pretty much it. If you liked the video, please be sure to leave a like. If you want to see more, please be sure to subscribe. I'll see you guys next one. Have a fantastic day. I'm out. Peace.